2 nights ago, I came home to a house I thought I knew, a place where every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the hall was as familiar as my own heartbeat. But that night, something was wrong. Something was inside with me, and I didn't know it until it was too late. I live in the heart of West Virginia, where the Appalachian Mountains swallow the world in green and shadow. My house sits alone miles from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by woods that hum with secrets. The isolation is my sanctuary. I love the silence, the way the forest breathes at night, the way the stars burn brighter without city lights to dull them. My life is simple: a steady job, a modest home, routines that keep me grounded. Crime is a stranger here. People go missing in the woods sometimes, sure, but that's the forests doing wild animals bad luck, or old folklore that nobody takes seriously. Houses don't get broken into. At least that's what I thought. The night it happened started innocently enough. My best friend Ethan threw a party for his sister's birthday, a tradition they've kept since they were kids, born a year apart on May 15th. The house was packed with familiar faces, laughter spilling into the night, bottles clinking as stories grew louder. I stayed sober as always. These mountain roads are treacherous, narrow winding, cloaked in darkness. One wrong turn, and you're in a ditch. Or worse. I'm the responsible one, the guy who gets everyone home safe. That night, I stayed late, dropping off 2 friends on a detour that stretched my drive to nearly an hour. The roads were empty, my headlights carving through the black, the silence of the mountains wrapping around me like a blanket. It was peaceful, almost meditative, but then halfway home, my body betrayed me. A sharp, urgent need to pee hit out of nowhere. I cursed under my breath. During the day, I'd have pulled over, stepped into the trees, and been done with it. But at night, the forest isn't your friend after dark. The shadows move in ways they shouldn't, and the air feels heavier, like it's watching you. I wasn't about to risk it. 5 minutes down the road was a gas station, a dingy relic squatting in the middle of nowhere. I hated that place. The fluorescent lights flickered like they were on their last breath. The pumps rusted, the windows smeared with grime. And the guy who worked there, some rough, unshaven creep with eyes that lingered too long, gave me the chills. We'd clashed before. I'm not one to take crap, and he'd gotten an earful from me once or twice. But I had no choice. The gas station was better than the woods. I pulled into the lot, the gravel crunching under my tires, and parked close to the store. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a sickly glow. I stepped out, leaving the car unlocked. Stupid, I know, but I'd only be a minute. As I walked toward the bathroom around the side, I glanced through the store's glass door. The clerk was there, leaning on the counter, his eyes locked on me. Then he nodded, slow, deliberate, to someone I couldn't see. My stomach twisted. I scanned the store. Empty. No customers, no one else behind the counter. Just him. I shook it off, told myself I was being paranoid. Living out here, you get used to the quiet, but it can make your mind play tricks. The bathroom was as grim as I remembered. Tiles cracked, sink stained the air thick with mildew. I did my business, my ears straining for any sound outside. As I washed my hands, the cold water stinging my skin, a sharp sound cut through the silence. A car door slamming shut. My heart lurched. I froze, water dripping from my fingers. Listening. Nothing. No engine, no footsteps, just the hum of the fluorescent bulb overhead. I rushed outside, my pulse hammering. The lot was empty. My car exactly where I'd left it, the only vehicle in sight. I checked the front seats. The back, nothing. I looked back at the store. The clerk was still there, staring. His face, unreadable eyes, boring into me like he knew something I didn't. A shiver crawled up my spine. I'm not the type to spook easily. Growing up here, you learn to shrug off the forest's noises, the odd shapes in the dark. But this was different. This felt personal. I got in, locked the doors, and peeled out of there, the gas station, shrinking in my rearview mirror. The rest of the drive was quiet, but my mind wouldn't settle. That nod, that sound, the way he watched me, it clung to me like damp fog. I tried to focus on the road, the familiar curves, the way my headlights danced across the trees. But the unease grew a weight in my chest I couldn't shake. When I got home, I pulled into the garage, locked the car, the garage door, the front door, every bolt, every latch. My house was my fortress. 2 stories of comfort carved out of the wilderness. Upstairs, the bedrooms and a small office. Downstairs, a hallway leading to the kitchen, garage, living room, and dining area. I checked the alarm, made sure it was armed, and collapsed into bed, exhausted. The night should have ended there, but at 3:40 a.m., something woke me. Not a loud noise, not a crash, just a feeling like the air in the room had shifted. I lay still, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening. The house was silent, but it wasn't the right kind of silence. It was too heavy, too deliberate, like someone was holding their breath. I waited, my heart thudding in my ears. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing, insomnia, maybe messing with my head. I got up to use the bathroom, maybe grab a snack. As I stepped out of my room, I froze. The bedroom door was ajar. I never leave it open. Ever. Since I was a kid, I've had this thing. I can't sleep. unless the doors closed, sealed tight. It's automatic, like brushing my teeth. I stood there, staring at the gap, the sliver of darkness beyond. Had I forgotten? No. I hadn't. I shook it off, blaming exhaustion, and headed downstairs to the kitchen. The house felt different, though, like it wasn't mine anymore. I flicked on the light, and at first, everything looked normal. The counter, the sink, the fridge. But when I reached for the fridge handle, my fingers stuck to it, tacky, like someone had spilled soda and hadn't cleaned it up. I pulled my hand back, my skin crawling. I hadn't touched the fridge since morning. I looked around. A loaf of bread sat on the counter, half-open crumbs scattered across the floor. A chair was pushed out, angled wrong. My breath caught in my throat. Someone had been here. Someone had walked through my house, touched my things while I was asleep. The realization hit like a punch. I ran upstairs, grabbed my gun from the nightstand, and started checking the house, room by room. My hands shook, not from fear, but from rage, from the violation of my space. Every shadow seemed to move, every corner hiding something. The office was clear, the bathroom empty, but the deeper I went, the more I noticed little things, subtle but wrong. A book on the shelf, tilted at an odd angle. A drawer in the dining room, slightly open. The air smelled different, like sweat, and something metallic. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I crept into the living room. Gun raised my pulse, a drumbeat in my skull. And there he was. A man maybe in his 40s, sprawled on my couch like he owned the place, his chest rising and falling in slow, even breaths. He was asleep, his face slack, one arm dangling over the edge. I stood frozen, my mind screaming. Who was he? How had he gotten in? The alarm was on. I'd locked everything. I stepped closer, my grip tightening on the gun. His eyes snapped open, locking onto mine, and I swear there was nothing behind them. No fear, no surprise, just a cold, empty stare, like he wasn't even human. I pressed the barrel against his forehead, my voice low, but steady. The cops are coming. Get out now, or I shoot. I expected him to wig, to fight, to do something. But he didn't. He just stood, slow and deliberate, his gaze never leaving mine. He walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped into the night without a word. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and stood there, my hands trembling, my mind reeling. What the hell had just happened? I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, still numb, I called Ethan. I told him about the man the couch, the gun. He listened, asked me to walk him through the night, from the beginning. That's when it hit me. The gas station, the nod, the sound of the car door. I hadn't checked the trunk. I ran to the garage, flung it open. Nothing was out of place, but I knew. He'd been in there, curled up in the dark, riding home with me, inches away, separated only by a thin sheet of metal. I've gone over it 1,000 times since. Nothing was stolen. He didn't look homeless, didn't act violent. Maybe he was high, his mind unmoored. But that doesn't explain the clerk, the way he nodded, the way he watched me. I know he's part of it. I know he knows something. One day, I'll go back to that gas station. One day, I'll get answers. But for now, every night, I check the trunk. I check the locks. And I sleep with the gun by my side, because I know out here, in the shadow of the mountains, you're never really alone. Last week, deep in the Appalachian mountains, I heard something that still haunts my dreams. A man's laughter, sharp and unhinged, echoing through the trees at 4:00 a.m. It wasn't one of us. It wasn't human. And it was closer than you'd ever want to know. The Appalachian Mountains are my second home. For 5 years, Kevin, Lillian, and I have carved our way through their trails, chasing the kind of freedom you only find where the world falls silent. We grew up together, the three of us closer than siblings, bound by shared secrets and late-night promises. Kevin's the dreamer, always chasing some grand adventure. Lillian's the planner, the one who maps our routes and keeps us grounded. Me, I'm the one who holds it all together, the glue when things get messy. Every summer, we pick a new stretch of the Appalachians, losing ourselves in the green sea of pines, the jagged ridges, the rivers that whisper stories older than time. This year, we chose Maine, a wild, untouched corner we'd never explored. The air there felt different, heavier, like the mountains were watching us. Kevin wasn't himself this time. 3 weeks before the trip, his relationship imploded in a messy, heart-shattering breakup. He'd loved her, or thought he had, and the fallout left him hollow. His usual spark was gone, replaced by a quiet gloom that hung over him like a storm cloud. Lillian and I tried everything to pull him out of it. Dumb jokes, old stories, even a ridiculous game of guessing animal tracks in the dirt. Sometimes he'd laugh, his eyes crinkling the way they used to, but by nightfall, he'd slip back into that dark place, staring into the fire like it held answers we couldn't see. For 3 days, we hiked, set up camp, and kept the rhythm of our tradition. But Kevin's silence weighed on us. The mountains, usually a refuge, felt colder. This time, their shadows longer. their silence less comforting. On the fourth night, everything changed. We'd set up camp in a clearing, the ground uneven, forcing our tents apart more than usual. The spot wasn't ideal, but it was the best we could find after a long day of climbing. The air was crisp, the sky a deep indigo speckled with stars. We sat around the fire, the flames crackling, casting flickering shadows on the trees. Kevin was worse than ever, his face drawn, his answers short. Lillian and I exchanged glances, wordlessly, agreeing we had to do something. That's when I remembered the whiskey. I'd packed a small bottle, tucked it in my bag on a whim, knowing Lillian wouldn't approve. Drinking in the woods is reckless. Your senses dull, your instincts blur. And out here, that's a gamble with stakes you don't want to test. But Kevin wasn't just sad. He was drowning. I'd seen him like this before, after his first 2 breakups, spiraling into a funk that took months to shake. A little whiskey, I thought, might bring him back. I caught Lillian's eye, gave her a nod to stay calm, and pulled the bottle from my pack. Her lips tightened, but she didn't stop me. She knew what I was doing. Kevin's eyes lit up at the sight of the amber liquid, a flicker of life returning to his face. "You're a genius," he said, his voice warmer than it had been all week. Lillian and I didn't touch it. We needed to stay sharp. But Kevin drank first a sip, then a gulp, then more. I let him go for a while, watching the tension in his shoulders ease his laughter, bubbling up as we traded stories. We talked about a YouTube video we'd seen some camper who vanished near Black Mountain in Pennsylvania, leaving behind only a torn backpack. Kevin loved that kind of stuff, the creepy tales that made the woods feel alive with secrets. For a moment, it was like old times, the 3 of us, lost in the glow of the fire, the mountains fading into the background. But I had to cut him off. He was swaying his words, slurring the bottle, nearly empty. I grabbed it, tucked it away, and we stumbled to our tents, exhausted but lighter. The night felt like a victory, a small reclaiming of who we were. My tent was farthest from the fire, the canvas walls thin against the chill. I crawled inside, zipped it shut, and lay there listening to the forest's hum, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. Sleep came slowly, my mind replaying Kevin's laughter, Lillian's quiet nod, the way the fire had warmed my hands. I drifted off the world, fading to black. Then at 4:00 a.m., it started. A sound pulled me from sleep, sharp and wrong, like a blade slicing through the silence. Laughter. A man's laughter, high-pitched and jagged, echoing through the trees. At first, my groggy mind thought it was Kevin. maybe still drunk, messing around. But it wasn't right. It was too wild, too unhinged, like it came from somewhere deep and broken. I lay still, my heart pounding, trying to place it. The laughter stopped, leaving a silence so thick it pressed against my chest. Then it started again, closer this time, curling around the edges of my tent like smoke. That's when Lillian burst in her face, pale her eyes, wide with terror. "It's not Kevin," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There's someone out there, laughing like a maniac." Adrenaline flooded my system, burning away the fog of sleep. I grabbed my gun from my pack, my hands steady, despite the fear clawing at my gut. Lillian's panic was contagious, her breath ragged, her fingers gripping my arm. Who wouldn't be scared? I thought, trying to anchor myself. We were miles from civilization, high in the mountains, in a place where stories of lost hikers and strange lights were more than just campfire tales. I told Lillian to check on Kevin to make sure he was safe. She nodded, slipping out into the dark, while I stepped outside, the gun heavy in my hands. The night was a wall of black. The trees loomed like sentinels, their branches swallowing the starlight. The air was cold, biting my skin, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The laughter came again, sharper now, so close. I swore I could feel it, vibrating in my bones. I raised the gun, scanning the darkness, but there was nothing, just the endless maze of trunks and shadows. "We're armed!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the night. The only response was louder laughter, shrill and mocking, like it was taunting me. I yelled again, "I'm not messing around." But it kept going, rising and falling. Sometimes so near, I thought he was steps away. Sometimes fading, like he was circling us, a predator playing with its prey. Lillian came back, dragging Kevin, who was bleary-eyed and confused, his face flushed from the whiskey. "What's going on?" he mumbled, but Lillian shushed him, her eyes locked on the trees. The laughter stopped again, and the silence was worse heavy, suffocating like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to make a move. Then it started again, out of nowhere. A cackle that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around us like a noose. I gripped the gun tighter, my palms slick with sweat. "Stay close," I whispered, pulling them toward the fire's dying embers, the only light we had. We sat there, huddled together, the cold seeping into our bones. The laughter came in waves, unpredictable, each burst shredding our nerves. I tried to track it, to figure out where he was, but it was impossible. The sound bounced off the trees, distorted by the wind, a cruel trick of the forest. My mind raced, conjuring images, a lone madman, a group of cultists, something not human at all. I remembered a story my uncle told me as a kid about a hiker in these mountains who heard laughter before vanishing. His tent found empty, his boots still laced. Was this what he heard? Was this how it started? Lillian's hand trembled in mine, her breath shallow. Kevin was sobering up fast, his eyes darting to every shadow. "What does he want?" he whispered, but I had no answer. The laughter wasn't just sound. It was a presence, a weight, like it was alive, feeding on our fear. I kept the gun raised, my arms aching, my eyes straining against the dark. The fire was nearly out, the glow barely reaching the nearest trees. And then silence again. It stretched on seconds, turning to minutes, until I thought maybe it was over. But I knew better. The forest was playing with us, lulling us into a false sense of safety. It came back, louder, closer. A scream of laughter that felt like it was inside my skull. I stood, shouting into the void, "Show yourself." But there was nothing. Just the echo of my own voice swallowed by the trees. Lillian was crying now. Quiet sobs she tried to hide. Kevin gripped a knife, his knuckles white. We were trapped, not by walls, but by the dark, by the unknown. The laughter stopped again, and this time it didn't return. But we didn't move. We sat there, frozen, waiting for the sun, each rustle of leaves, a knife to our nerves. When the first gray light of dawn broke through the canopy, we didn't hesitate. We tore down the camp, shoving gear into our packs, our hands shaking, our eyes scanning the trees. The forest was different in the daylight, softer, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like it was watching, waiting for us to let our guard down. We hiked out fast, not speaking the weight of the night pressing on us. A few hours later, we reached a small town, the sight of street lights and houses, a lifeline we clung to. We didn't talk about it. Not really. We didn't need to. The laughter was burned into us, a scar we'd carry forever. I hear it sometimes in the quiet of my apartment when the world is still. It's not real, I tell myself, but it feels real. The mountains took something from us that night, something we'll never get back. Who was he? Why was he there? I don't know. I don't want to know. But I know this. We'll never go back to those woods. Not now. Not ever. The laughter lives there, and it's waiting. 1 year ago, I woke up at 3:00 a.m. to the sound of a key turning in the lock of a house I was supposed to have all to myself. Someone was inside, moving through the dark, and when they tried to open my bedroom door, I realized I wasn't alone, and I never had been. My name is Noah, and for 6 years I've been a house sitter, mostly in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. It's a good gig, quiet, flexible, lets me sink into my own world while keeping someone else's safe. I'm picky about jobs. I stick to the city unless the pay's worth the travel. But last year, I made an exception for James, my best friend since we were kids, tearing through video games and backyard adventures in West Virginia. We're cut from the same cloth, James and I, even if we only see each other once a year now. His house, tucked in a quiet corner of West Virginia, feels like a second home to me. When he asked me to house sit for a week while he was away, I didn't hesitate. It was a chance to escape the city, to breathe the mountain air, to work on my new website, and maybe find a little peace. James's place is a sanctuary surrounded by dense forest, the kind of place where the trees seem to whisper secrets after dark. The nearest neighbor is a mile away, and the silence is so deep you can hear your own heartbeat. James warned me about the basics. Lock the doors. Check the windows don't wander too far into the woods at night. I'd stayed there before, so I knew the drill. What I didn't know was that James shared the house with Nick, a guy I'd never met. From what James said, Nick was solid, a long-haul delivery driver who was gone for weeks at a time. He wasn't supposed to be home that week, but his schedule was unpredictable, so James gave me his number, just in case. I didn't think much of it. I was planning for a quiet week, a mini vacation, where I could focus on my business and soak up the solitude. The first day was perfect. I set up on the patio, the sun warm on my face, the forest alive with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. My laptop hummed as I worked on my website, tweaking designs, drafting content, losing myself in the flow. The house felt welcoming. Its 3 bedrooms upstairs, the spacious kitchen and living room, downstairs, all bathed in soft light. I cooked a simple dinner, went to bed early in the guest room, a small space at the end of the upstairs hallway, doubling as storage, and fell asleep to the hum of a movie on Netflix. The night was still the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a blanket, but the second day, something shifted. I was back on the patio, my fingers flying over the keyboard, when a prickle ran down my neck, like I was being watched. I looked up, scanning the tree line where the forest pressed close to the house. There, between the trunks, a shadow moved just for a second, too quick to be sure. My heart stuttered. I stood, called out, "Hey, anyone there?" My voice echoed, swallowed by the trees. No answer. I stepped closer, peering into the green gloom, but the woods were empty, the shadows still. Maybe it was a deer, I told myself, or the light playing tricks. Living in the city, you forget how alive the forest can feel, how it watches you back. I shook it off, went back to my work, but the unease lingered, a faint hum in the back of my mind. I stayed alert, glancing at the trees every few minutes, but nothing else moved. By 6:00 p.m., I packed up, made a light dinner, and retreated to the guest room. The house was the same cozy, familiar, but it felt different, like the air had thickened. I put on another movie, let the voices fill the silence, and drifted off halfway through the screen, casting a soft glow across the room. At 3:00 a.m., the sound of the front door opening and closing jolted me awake. My heart slammed against my ribs, my body frozen under the blankets. I was supposed to be alone. Nick wasn't due back. I lay there, straining to hear every nerve on edge. Footsteps moved downstairs, slow and deliberate, the floorboards creaking under their weight. Someone was in the house, and they'd used a key. My mind raced. James had said Nick's schedule was erratic. Maybe he'd come back early. It had to be him. Who else could it be? I wanted to go introduce myself, to shake off the fear with a handshake and a laugh. But it was 3:00 a.m., and something about the silence between those footsteps felt wrong. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the floor, and locked the bedroom door, the click loud in the quiet. I stood there, listening. The footsteps climbed the stairs, steady, unhurried. They stopped at the bathroom just down the hall. Water ran, then stopped. I held my breath, waiting. The upstairs layout flashed in my mind. Bathroom to the right of the stairs. James's room next, then Nick's, and finally mine, a small guest room, once used by James's sister. The footsteps moved again down the hall, past James's door, past Nick's. Then a sharp metallic sound, like a tool against wood, followed by the creak of a door. My stomach twisted. The footsteps grew faster, frantic, like someone was searching, tearing through drawers, shoving furniture. I gripped my phone, my thumb hovering over Nick's number. Should I text him? Call out? But this was his house, and I was the guest. Maybe he was just drunk, or tired, or had a reason for the noise. I tried to calm myself, to breathe, but the sounds painted a picture I couldn't ignore. Someone rummaging, desperate, in a house that wasn't theirs. I sat on the bed, the movie still playing its cheerful dialogue, mocking the tension in the room. Then the footsteps returned slow and heavy, stopping right outside my door. The handle turned the door, rattling against the lock. My blood ran cold. Nick, I called, my voice shaking. It's Noah. James asked me to stay here. Silence. Not a word, not a sound. But I knew someone was there, inches away, separated only by a thin wooden door. I called again, louder. Nick, it's me. Nothing. The air felt electric, charged with a presence I couldn't see. Then the handle stopped moving, and the footsteps retreated, slow and deliberate, back down the stairs. I sat there, my heart pounding, my mind screaming. James had said Nick was chill, that he knew I was coming. That wasn't chill. That was something else entirely. I didn't sleep. I turned the TV up, let the noise drown out my fear, but I couldn't focus. The house felt alive, its walls watching its shadows, hiding secrets. At dawn, I dragged myself to the patio, trying to lose myself in work, but my hands trembled on the keyboard. The memory of that door, that silence, clung to me like damp fog. Around noon, I went inside to make lunch, expecting to see Nick to clear the air. But the house was empty, the upstairs silent. I told myself he'd slept in that, he'd been unpacking, that it was all normal. But by 5 p.m., when he still hadn't appeared, the unease grew into something sharper. What if it wasn't Nick? I texted him, keeping it casual. Hey Noah, here. I'm at the house. Left some lunch in the fridge if you're around. The reply came instantly, and it froze me in place. Not home. Won't be back for 2 weeks, at least. My breath caught my vision, narrowing to a pinprick. Whoever had been in the house last night, whoever had tried my door, wasn't Nick. They'd had a key walked in like they belonged, but they weren't supposed to be here. I rushed inside, locked the front door, and ran upstairs. That's when I saw it. Something I'd missed in the morning haze. James's bedroom door was splintered at the edge, the lock mangled like someone had pried it open. I pushed it open, my pulse roaring in my ears. The room was chaos clothes strewn across the floor, drawers, yanked out papers, scattered like leaves. I checked Nick's room next. The same. The door frame cracked, the contents upended, as if a storm had torn through. Someone had been searching, tearing the house apart while I slept, while I sat on the patio, oblivious. I called James, my voice shaking as I told him everything. The key, the footsteps, the door. Who else has a key? I demanded. His answer was a knife to the gut. No one. No one else should have one. He promised to call Nick to double check, but when he called back, his voice was grim. Nick hadn't given a key to anyone. Not his sister, not a friend, no one. The sun was setting the forest outside, turning black. and I knew I couldn't stay alone. The thought of that person coming back, slipping in with that key, was unbearable. I told James I'd stay one more night, but he had to come back the next day. I barricaded the guest room door, dragging a dresser across it, shoving the couch from the living room to block the hallway. I sat on the bed phone in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other. Every creak of the house a threat. The night stretched on endless, but no one came. At dawn, James arrived, his face pale as he saw the damage. Nick returned the next day, equally shaken. We changed the locks, checked every inch of the house, but nothing was missing. Whoever they were, they'd known exactly what they wanted, and they hadn't found it. To this day, we don't know who it was. The key, the search, the silence outside my door. It's a puzzle with no pieces, a shadow that lingers in my mind. I see that door, sometimes in my dreams, the handle turning, the silence waiting. I don't house sit outside Atlanta anymore, and when I close my eyes, I still hear those footsteps, slow and heavy, coming closer. 6 years ago, at 2:00 a.m., I sat trapped in my car at a deserted gas station, my heart pounding as a man named Rowan smashed through the window, his hand closing around my wrist. I thought I'd never make it out alive, but that was only the beginning of the nightmare. I was 19, living in the heart of West Virginia, where the Appalachian mountains cradle you in beauty by day and swallow you in darkness by night. I loved it there, the rolling hills, the dense forests, the quiet that made you feel like you were part of something ancient. But after what happened, the isolation I once cherished became a cage I had to escape. I moved to California, trading mountains for ocean, and now I only return a few times a year to see my parents and brother. Back then, I juggled 2 jobs to make ends meet, mornings at a convenience store, evenings at a gas station just off the highway. The gas station gig was tough, 3 night shifts a week, 9:00 p.m. to 2:00 a.m. In a place so remote, the stars burned brighter than the neon sign out front. The drive home took 35 minutes, a lonely stretch through woods so thick they seemed to breathe. The gas station was a lifeline for truckers and the occasional lost tourist, its fluorescent lights buzzing like dying insects. The pumps rusted the air, heavy with grease and gasoline. I never worked alone, thank God. There was always someone in the back cooking up burgers or fries for the road-weary. On that Tuesday, it was Jared, a lanky guy with a quick smile who kept the kitchen running. Tuesdays were slow, the kind of night where you counted the minutes until closing. It was raining a steady drizzle that turned the lot into a slick black mirror, the station feeling darker, smaller, like the world ended at the edge of the light. By 1:00 a.m., Jared and I were wiping down counters, ready to lock up and go home. Then, at 1:05 a.m., he walked in. The bell above the door jingled, and I looked up to see a man who didn't belong. He wasn't a trucker with their weathered caps and tired eyes, or a tourist with their maps and fanny packs. He was pale, unshaven, his clothes rumpled like he'd slept in them for days. His eyes were what got me, dark, unblinking, fixed on me, like I was the only thing in the room. Something about him felt wrong, like a shadow that didn't match its source. I forced a smile, asked if he needed anything. "I'm hungry," he said, his voice flat, and headed to the farthest table in the corner. He ordered black coffee and fries sitting, so he faced the counter, his gaze never leaving me. I moved behind the counter, my skin prickling under his stare. Every time I glanced over, he was there watching, his face blank, but his eyes alive with something I couldn't name. We traded fake smiles, the kind you give to keep things civil, but my stomach churned. I'd dealt with creeps before, guys too drunk to take a hint, one so bold another customer had to step in. Compared to them, this guy wasn't aggressive, but he was worse somehow. His silence louder than their words. I slipped into the kitchen, asked Jared how long the fries would take. "Dropped the bag," he said, shrugging. "Gotta make a fresh batch. 10 minutes. I nodded, steeling myself, and walked back to the guy's table. "Sorry for the wait," I said. "It'll be quick. Want your coffee now, or with the fries?" He tilted his head like he was studying me. "Both at the same time," he said. I must have made a face because he laughed, a dry, hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. "I know it's weird," he said. I forced a smile, said I'd seen weirder, trying to keep it light. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "You live nearby." My heart skipped. It was a classic line, one I'd heard too many times. 3 towns over. I lied, my voice steady. I never told strangers where I lived, a habit drilled into me by years of late nights and lonely roads. "You like it there?" he pressed. I shrugged. "It's fine. Not great. Not awful." I excused myself, saying I had to check something in the back, and fled to the kitchen, my pulse racing. When the food was ready, I brought it to his table, keeping my distance. He held out his hand, his fingers pale and thin. "I'm Rowan," he said, his eyes locked on mine. I nodded, didn't take his hand, and retreated to the counter. A few minutes later, a semi rumbled into the lot, and relief washed over me. Another person meant safety, a buffer against Rowan's stare. By 1:30, he finished, and I dropped the check, a silent nudge to leave. He paid in cash, said, "Nice meeting you," and walked out. Watching him drive away, I exhaled the knot in my chest, loosening. I thought it was over. Jared and I finished closing, locking the front door at 2 a.m. He lived the other way, his car parked near the entrance. He waved, drove off, and I headed to my car parked in the back corner of the lot, as far from the door as you could get. 5 trucks loomed in the darkness, their hulks blocking the light. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy. The vending machine's glow, the only beacon in the black. My skin crawled, goosebumps rising as I quickened my pace. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and turned the key. Nothing. I tried again, my heart sinking. Still nothing. Panic clawed at me. My car had never failed, not once, but now, at 2 a.m., in the middle of nowhere, it was dead. Then headlights flared, cutting through the dark. An engine roared, and a car pulled into the lot, slow and deliberate. My stomach dropped. It was Rowan. I knew it before I saw his face, before he parked right next to me, his smile visible through the window. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911. I'm at the gas station off Route 19. I told the operator, my voice trembling. A man's following me. Rowan motioned for me to roll down my window, his smile never wavering. I cracked it just enough to speak, trying to sound calm. "My car won't start," I said. "Any idea why?" He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. "Don't worry," he said. "I know cars. Get out and I'll take a look." My mind screamed, no. I knew the cops were coming, but they weren't here yet. I had to buy time. "Can you check under the hood first?" I asked, my voice tight. His smile flickered a flash of something dark frustration. Maybe, but he nodded. Sure. As he moved to the front, I called Jared, whispering so Rowan wouldn't hear. "Come back," I begged. "He's here, and my car's dead." Jared was close, just minutes away. I prayed he'd make it. Rowan returned his face calm, but his eyes hard. "You need to get out," he said, his voice sharper now. I shook my head, clutching the phone. Then he bent down, picking something from the ground. I hadn't seen a brick, heavy and rough. Before I could react, he swung, and the passenger window shattered glass, spraying across the seat. 2 shards sliced my cheek. Warm blood trickling down my face. I screamed the sound, raw and desperate. as he reached through, grabbing my wrist, his grip like iron. "Get out," he snarled, yanking me toward the jagged hole. I fought, kicking, screaming, my voice echoing into the night, hoping anyone would hear. Through the panic, I didn't see Jared's car screeching back into the lot, didn't hear him jump out until a gunshot cracked the air. Rowan froze, his grip loosening, his eyes wide. He let go, bolting into the woods, vanishing into the dark. I collapsed against the seat, gasping my wrist, throbbing my face, stinging. Jared ran to me, his face pale, his gun still raised. "You okay?" he asked, his voice shaking. I nodded, barely able to speak. The police arrived minutes later, their lights flashing, their voices calm and kind. They took my statement, bandaged my cheek, and promised they'd find him. I didn't believe them. But 2 days later, they called. Rowan had been caught hitchhiking a few miles away, his face bruised, his clothes torn. He was from Jackson, Ohio, with 2 restraining orders against him. Knowing he was locked up helped, but it didn't erase the fear, the memory of his hand on my wrist, his smile through the glass. That night changed me. I couldn't stay in West Virginia, couldn't face those lonely roads, that suffocating darkness. I found a job in California, packed my life into a car that now started every time and left. It's been 6 years, and I still check my locks, still flinch at headlights in the dark. I don't work night shifts anymore, and I never will. But sometimes, in the quiet, I see Rowan's face, his eyes watching, waiting. And I know, out there in the shadows, he's still real. 12 years ago, deep in the Appalachian wilderness, I watched my best friend Mary laugh like a stranger. Her eyes empty, her voice twisted by something I couldn't explain. Then I saw him, a man pouring poison into our water, his shadow vanishing into the trees. He's still out there, and I still hear her laughter in my dreams. Mary and I grew up on the edge of a forest so vast it felt like it could swallow the world. As kids, we spent summers weaving through its trails, chasing fireflies, building forts from fallen branches. The woods were our kingdom, a place where time didn't exist, where the air smelled of buesa and freedom. Even as adults, that love for nature held us together. Mary became a seasoned hiker, her pack always ready, her boots worn from countless miles. I wasn't as dedicated, but I'd join her when I could, drawn to the quiet of the mountains, the way they stripped away the noise of life. 12 years ago, Mary set her sights on a long stretch of the Appalachian Trail, a dream she'd been chasing for years. She asked me to come, but a new job chained me to the city. We made a plan instead she'd hike alone for a week, and I'd meet her at a designated spot with fresh supplies, food, clothes, anything she needed. That first weekend was perfect. I found her at the trailhead, her face tanned, her eyes bright with the thrill of the wild. She'd kept her pace, her spirits high, and we spent 2 days exploring busier trails, laughing over old memories. The forest was alive around us, birds calling streams, gurgling the air cool and sharp. On Sunday after lunch, I had to leave work called, and Mary was set to continue alone. We agreed to meet again the next Friday night, Saturday morning, at the latest, if she fell behind. The plan was simple, foolproof. I drove back, the mountains fading in my rear view, a quiet contentment settling in my chest. Mary was in her element, and I'd see her soon. But on Thursday night at 11 p.m., my phone rang, and everything changed. It was Mary calling from her satellite phone, her voice a frantic jumble of words. "I don't know if I can keep going," she said, her breath ragged. "Maybe you shouldn't come." I sat up in bed, my heart racing. "What's wrong?" I asked over and over, but she didn't answer, just repeated the same phrases, her voice sharp with panic. Then, out of nowhere, she switched. "No, you have to come. Bring my mom's ruby necklace. It's in the drawer by her bed." She told me exactly where to find it. Her words precise, but her tone wrong, like she was reading a script. I had a key to her place, so it was doable. But the request made no sense. Why a necklace? Why now, I asked, if she was okay, if someone was with her. But she insisted everything was fine, even as her voice trembled. "Should I call the cops?" I asked. "No," she said, too quick. "I'm fine. I wasn't fine." Her call gnawed at me, a splinter in my mind. I'd heard Mary tired, stressed, even scared, but never like this, disconnected, almost paranoid. I started imagining the worst, someone following her, watching her, or maybe the isolation breaking her down. I called the police the next morning, told them about the call. My fear she might not show up. They listened, but I could tell they thought I was overreacting, a city guy spooked by nothing. I went to Mary's place, found the necklace, a delicate chain with a deep red stone, warm in my hand, and headed to the trailhead. My stomach knotted with worry. When I saw her on Saturday, she was fine, too fine. She smiled, hugged me, acted like the call never happened. I handed her the necklace, and she tucked it into her pack, saying it made her feel closer to her mom. That was it. No explanation. No trace of the panic I'd heard. I tried to bring it up, but she brushed it off, said I was worrying too much, that she'd just been tired. I felt like a fool standing there with the police's skeptical looks in my mind. But I knew what I'd heard. Her voice had been wrong, like someone else was speaking through her. We hiked that day, her pace steady, her chatter light, but something lingered, a shadow in her eyes, a moment when she'd stare into the trees and go quiet. I told myself it was fatigue, that I was reading too much into it. That night, it came back. We were in our tents, the forest silent, except for the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I was half asleep when Mary's voice cut through the dark, low, and urgent. "Someone's out there," she said, her words sharp with fear. I sat up, my heart pounding, and crawled into her tent. She was sitting, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes wide and unseeing. "They're following me," she whispered. Before I could respond, she started laughing, a jagged, hysterical sound that wasn't hers, like it came from somewhere deep and broken. It wasn't joy, wasn't amusement. It was wrong, like a machine, glitching, spitting out noise that didn't belong. I grabbed her shoulders, shook her gently. "Mary, what's wrong?" But she didn't answer, just laughed until her face went blank, her eyes empty, like she'd checked out of her own body. Then, as suddenly as it started, she collapsed, her breathing deep and even, like she'd fallen into a coma. I sat there, frozen, my mind racing. Was it drugs? A breakdown? Something she ate? I thought of stories my dad used to tell about hikers in these mountains who ate wild berries and lost their minds wandering until they vanished. But Mary was careful, meticulous. She wouldn't make that mistake. I stayed in her tent, my flashlight casting shadows on the canvas, every rustle outside a threat. When she woke at dawn, she was herself again, slow, a little groggy. But Mary, I tried to talk about the night, told her she wasn't okay, that we needed to leave. She laughed it off, said she didn't remember, insisted on finishing the hike. "You're overreacting," she said, but her eyes darted to the trees, betraying her. I didn't trust it. I stayed close, watching her, waiting for another sign. That evening, we set up camp again, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine. Mary said she'd gather sticks for the fire, and I went with her, my nerves on edge. Halfway through, I saw my chance. "Need to hit the bathroom," I said, and doubled back to camp, wanting to check her pack again. What I saw stopped my heart. A man stood by our gear, his back to me, his movements slow and deliberate. He held my water bottle, pouring something from a small vial, the liquid catching the fading light. He moved to Mary's bottle, doing the same, his hands steady, like he'd done this before. Fear hit me like a wave, cold and suffocating. I had no weapon, no phone signal, just my flashlight and a pocket knife too small to matter. I waited, hidden behind a tree, until he slipped into the forest, his figure swallowed by the dark. I sprinted to Mary, my breath ragged, and told her everything. Her face paled, her eyes wide with the same fear I'd heard in her voice on the phone. She didn't question me, didn't hesitate. She'd suspected something I could tell. We had to leave now, even in the dark. We grabbed our packs, leaving the tainted water behind, and started hiking our flashlights, cutting through the blackness. To cover our escape, I spoke loudly, faking exhaustion. "I'm done for the night, Mary. Let's just rest." She caught on, her voice steady as she played along. "Just a short walk, then we're back." We wanted him to think we weren't running, that we hadn't seen him, but we heard footsteps. Faint at first, then closer, crunching leaves in the dark. Mary's eyes met mine, her fear mirroring my own. We picked up our pace, the forest a maze of shadows, every tree a hiding place. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but we kept moving, driven by the knowledge that someone was out there, following, waiting. By 5 Hailuo a.m., we reached a trailhead near a small town, the sight of street lights a lifeline. We collapsed, gasping, and called the police. As we told them everything, the call, Mary's laughter, the man with the vial, one officer slipped, his face grim. "This isn't the first time," he said. At least 3 other hikers had reported similar incidents. Strange behavior, tainted supplies, a figure in the woods. The case was open, unsolved. The man still out there, a ghost in the forest. 12 years later, he's still free, and I still see him in my nightmares. Mary recovered, but she never hiked the Appalachians again. The ruby necklace sits in her drawer, untouched. I hear her laughter sometimes, that broken, unnatural sound echoing in the quiet of my room. The forest hides its secrets, and he's one of them, waiting for the next hiker to step into his trap. 2 years ago, in the dead of night, I stumbled across 3 men in black, dumping something massive into a lake deep in the Smoky Mountains. They saw me, and one of them came for me. His face hidden, his voice cold. If I hadn't kept my cool, I wouldn't be here to tell you this. My name is Duncan, and for 13 years, I've been chasing the wild heart of America's trails. It started after my mom passed, when grief was a weight I couldn't carry sitting still. Hiking became my escape, my therapy, a way to drown out the pain with the rhythm of my boots on dirt. I've trekked through deserts, climbed peaks, slept under stars that felt close enough to touch. The isolation, the landscapes, the people you meet, they weave into moments that stay with you. Even the weird ones, the drifters who talk too much or stare too long, give you stories to laugh about later. But what happened 2 years ago in the Smoky Mountains wasn't funny. It was the kind of thing that changes how you see the world. The kind of thing that makes you question if you're ever really alone out there. A coworker owns a cabin in the Smokies, a small wooden haven tucked in a valley where the trees grow thick and the air smells of pine and earth. He rents it out to strangers, but because we work together, he lets me stay for next to nothing. I'd been there twice before, and it was my sanctuary, a place to reset when life got heavy. That summer, I needed it. My sister had called her voice tight, talking about decisions we had to make about our dad's care. The weight of it clung to me, a fog I couldn't shake. I called my coworker, asked if the cabin was free, and drove up, craving the quiet of the mountains. The cabin is isolated a mile from the nearest neighbor, but not cut off. A small town sits a few miles away, and a popular trail runs close enough that you might see a hiker or two during the day. I'd heard stories about the Smokies' tales of lost hikers, strange lights, things that didn't add up. 2 years earlier, I'd had my own scare there. A couple pounded on the cabin door at midnight, their faces pale, saying someone was stalking them in the woods. I was cautious, but they were unarmed, terrified, and real. We called the police, and they handled it, but it stuck with me. The mountains aren't always what they seem. I learned to be careful, stick to known paths, avoid night hikes, always carry my gun. I arrived at the start of summer, when the Smokies are at their peak. The air warm, the forests bursting with green. For 3 days, I settled in hiking short trails, cooking simple meals, letting the rhythm of the place wash over me. The cabin was my refuge, its wooden walls solid, its windows framing the endless trees. I'd sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, feeling the world fall away. But on the third night, something shifted. My sister called again, her voice heavy with updates about Dad. The conversation left me restless, the cabin's walls closing in. I needed air, needed to move. There was a lake nearby, a 15-minute walk along a gentle path I'd taken before. It was past 10:00 p.m., but the night was calm, the forest alive, with the hum of crickets and the rustle of leaves. I grabbed my flashlight, my gun, and headed out, telling myself it was just a quick walk to clear my head. The path was familiar, the ground soft under my boots, the air cool against my skin. The forest smelled of damp moss and pine, the kind of scent that grounds you, makes you feel alive. My flashlight cut through the dark, its beam dancing across tree trunks, catching the glint of dew on leaves. I was starting to feel better, the weight of the day lifting when I reached the lake. Its surface was glass, reflecting the stars, the surrounding trees, a dark wall against the sky. I stopped breathing it in the silence so deep it felt sacred. Then I saw them. 3 figures dressed head to toe in black, their hoods up, moving with purpose on a small boat in the middle of the lake. They were lifting something huge, heavy, wrapped in dark cloth, struggling to heave it over the side. One of them nearly tipped the boat, his movements frantic, the water rippling around them. My heart stuttered. I wasn't supposed to see this. I hadn't realized my flashlight was still on its beam, slicing through the dark, betraying me. One of them turned his head, snapping toward me, his face hidden in shadow. I switched it off, my pulse hammering, but it was too late. They'd seen me. I stood frozen, my mind racing. Who were they? What were they dumping? It wasn't trash, not out here, not like this. The way they moved, the secrecy of it screamed trouble. I backed away, my boots silent on the soft earth. But before I turned, I saw one of them pull out a phone, his voice low, urgent. They were calling someone, and I knew it was about me. I moved fast, not running yet, but close my flashlight off, relying on the faint moonlight to guide me. The forest felt different now, the trees looming their branches, reaching like fingers. Every rustle was a threat, every shadow a figure waiting to strike. 5 minutes into my retreat, a sound stopped me cold. A sharp snap, not the natural creak of a branch, but deliberate, heavy like a foot on dry wood. I swung my flashlight up my heart, in my throat, and there he was, a man stepping out from behind a tree, his face wrapped in a black scarf, only his eyes visible glinting in the beam. He wasn't supposed to be there, and he didn't want me to know who he was. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice low, steady, like he was used to this. I pulled my gun, my hands steady, despite the fear clawing at my chest. "Let me pass," I said, my voice hard. "I didn't see anything, but if you don't move, I'll make sure you regret it." He didn't flinch, just stood there, his eyes locked on mine, weighing me. I held my ground, the gun heavy in my hands, my finger hovering over the trigger. "You saw nothing," I repeated louder, my voice cutting through the silence. Let me go, and it stays that way. He stepped back, slow, deliberate, his scarf hiding any expression. I moved past him, keeping the gun trained on his chest. My heart pounding so loud, I thought he could hear it. As soon as I was clear, I ran the forest a blur, my boots pounding the earth, my breath ragged. I knew they'd come after me. He'd backed off because he was alone, but the others would be back from the lake soon, 3 against 1. I couldn't go back to the cabin. It wasn't safe. My car was my only shot, parked a mile away, near the trailhead. The woods were alive now, every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, a sign they were closing in. At one point, I was sure I heard footsteps, quick and heavy, matching my pace. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept going, driven by the image of that scarf, those eyes, the thing they'd thrown into the lake. I'd learned a trick from a true crime documentary years ago, one that stuck with me. Always have a way out. Near my car, buried under a marked rock, was a small box, a gun, a burner phone, a first aid kit, a spare key. It was my lifeline, my paranoia paying off. I reached the spot, my hands shaking as I dug the dirt, cold and damp, under my fingers. I grabbed the key, jumped into the car, and locked the doors, my breath coming in gasps. The engine roared to life, and for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I drove straight to the police station, the road a blur, my mind replaying those figures, that scarf, that phone call. I told the police everything. The men, the boat, the thing in the lake, the man who confronted me. They listened skeptical at first, but the next day, they searched the cabin. It had been torn apart, drawers yanked open, furniture overturned like someone was looking for me. They got a warrant for the lake, but found nothing. The men must have gone back, pulled whatever it was out of the water, erased their tracks. The cabin break-in was proof I wasn't crazy, but it wasn't enough. They're still out there, whoever they are, doing God knows what. I never went back to the Smokies. I quit my job, cut ties with that part of my life. My coworker rents the cabin again, but I doubt he tells the guests what happened. I see those eyes sometimes, in the dark, watching me. The lake holds its secrets, and so do the mountains. Whatever they were hiding, it was worth coming after me for. And out there, in the shadows of the Smokies, they're still waiting. 3 nights into our hike in the West Virginia mountains, a woman stumbled into our camp, her clothes torn, her eyes wild with terror, begging for help from someone hunting her. Then he came, a man with a gun, his smile cold as death, demanding we give her back. That night changed us forever, and the forest we loved became a place we'd never return to. For years, the Appalachian Mountains were our sanctuary. My wife Agnes, our friend Alice, and I had carved a tradition out of their trails, starting with casual weekend hikes that grew into week-long expeditions. We weren't amateurs. Our packs were lean, our routes planned, our skills honed by years of navigating the wilderness. Hiking was therapy, a way to escape the grind of our lives. I work in tech, drowning in emails and deadlines that never sleep. Agnes, a nurse, carries the weight of life and death decisions, her heart heavy with stories she rarely shares. Alice, a high school teacher, battles the quiet frustration of being everything to her students: counselor, parent, educator, in a system that chews up its own. The mountains stripped that away, leaving just us, the trees, and the kind of silence you can feel in your bones. That summer, we planned a week in southern West Virginia, a stretch of the Appalachians we'd never tackled. We counted down the days, craving the untouched views, the crisp air, the chance to unplug from a world that would never stopped screaming. The first 3 days were perfect. We hit our pace, winding through forests where sunlight dappled the ground, climbing ridges that opened to vistas of rolling green. At night, we set up camp with the ease of a well-rehearsed dance. Agnes stashed our food high to keep bears away. Alice built a fire that warmed our hands, and I pitched the tents, fetching water from nearby streams. We laughed over burned marshmallows, traded stories under a sky blazing with stars, and fell asleep to the forest's lullaby, owls hooting leaves, rustling the world at peace. But on the third night, everything shattered. We were finishing camp as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in deep purples and reds. The air cooled fast, the daytime hum of insects fading into the eerie quiet of night. We were racing the last light, our breath visible in the chill, when she appeared. A woman staggered out of the brush, her clothes shredded her face, a mask of raw fear. She was filthy, her hair matted with dirt, her eyes sunken, her breathing shallow and quick like a cornered animal. We froze, stepping back, our hearts pounding at the sight of her. "Help me," she gasped, her voice cracked and desperate. "He's after me. He's hunting me." Her words tumbled out, disjointed, repeating, as if her mind couldn't hold them together. At first, we didn't know what to make of it. Was she hurt? Lost on something? But her terror was real, her body swaying like it might collapse. Agnes, always the caretaker, snapped out of it first. She guided the woman to sit by the fire, her voice soft but firm, trying to coax out her story. The woman ate the oatmeal we warmed for her, each bite slow, painful, like her body had forgotten how to function. She was young, maybe late 20s, her hands trembling as she gripped the bowl. She kept saying someone was after her, but the details were a mess. Snatches of words about running, hiding a man who wouldn't stop. We scanned the darkness beyond the firelight, seeing nothing, hearing nothing, but the weight of her fear settled over us like fog. We couldn't leave at night. The woods were pitch black, the trails treacherous without daylight. Our plan was to rest, keep her safe, and hike out at dawn to find help. Agnes sat with her murmuring reassurances while Alice fed the fire, her eyes darting to the trees. I checked the tents, my nerves on edge, the woman's words looping in my mind. She was being hunted. I thought of a story my dad told me once about a hiker in these mountains who vanished. His camp found abandoned his gear untouched. I pushed it away, focusing on the fire's glow, the warmth of our circle. The woman calmed her breathing, slowing, but her eyes stayed fixed on the flames, like she was somewhere else, somewhere awful. Then he came. We were about to crawl into our tents when a man stepped out of the trees, silent as a shadow, his presence chilling the air. He held a gun, its barrel glinting in the firelight, pointed at us, but his eyes were on her. His smile was wrong, cold, twisted like a predator, savoring its catch. "I just want her back," he said, his voice low, steady, locking eyes with me. "Hand her over, and no one gets hurt." He barely glanced at Agnes or Alice, his focus a blade aimed at me. My heart pounded my mind blank, like I was watching a nightmare unfold. The woman whimpered, shrinking behind Agnes, her fear a living thing. Alice moved first. Before I could react, she grabbed a burning branch from the fire, its flames licking the air, and hurled it at his face. It was pure instinct, a flash of defiance that caught him off guard. He stumbled back, the gun slipping from his hand, his arms flailing as he shielded his face. Agnes was on it, darting forward, snatching the gun from the dirt, her hands steady, despite the chaos. I stood frozen, my brain struggling to process the speed, the violence of it all. The man, realizing he'd lost control, turned and bolted into the woods, his figure swallowed by the dark. Before we could move, we spun around, panic surging. Where was the woman? We thought she'd run, vanished into the night. But then we found her, curled up in Agnes's tent, hugging her knees, shaking so hard the canvas trembled. Her fear broke my heart, a raw, helpless terror that mirrored our own. We were scared, all of us. The man's smile burned into our minds, the knowledge that he could return maybe not alone. We asked her if there were others, but she couldn't speak, her eyes glassy, her body locked in shock. I knew we couldn't stay. He was out there, waiting, and we were sitting ducks by that fire. I told Agnes and Alice to stay with her, to keep the gun ready. I grabbed a flashlight and headed into the woods, searching for a cell signal. Hiking at night is like walking through a dream. Every shadow moves. Every sound is a threat. The forest was alive, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, the rustle of leaves like whispers in my ear. I kept imagining him behind me, his gun raised, his smile cold. I had only a small knife, useless against a man like that, but I pushed on, climbing a ridge, my breath ragged, my hands shaking as I checked my phone. No bars, then, one flickering. I called 911, the signal dropping twice before I got through, my voice urgent as I gave our coordinates, told them about the man, the woman, the gun. "Hurry," I said, and started back, every step a battle against the dark. We waited, huddled in the tent, the gun in Agnes's hands, our eyes scanning the trees. Every snap of a twig, every rustle was him coming back, his smile leading the way. The woman didn't speak, just shook her face, buried in her knees. Alice held her hand, her own fear hidden behind a mask of calm. Agnes kept watch, her jaw set, the gun steady. The hours stretched endless until the first gray light of dawn broke through the canopy. The rescue team arrived, their voices a lifeline, their flashlights cutting through the dark. They took us to a hospital, the woman strapped to a stretcher, her face pale but alive. We were in shock, our hands trembling, our minds replaying that smile, that gun, that moment when everything flipped. At the hospital, we learned her story. She was Canadian, missing for over 2 months, her family certain she was gone. Her ex, also Canadian, had snapped when she left him, crossing borders, tracking her across states, isolating her in the wilderness. He'd held her for weeks, a nightmare she barely survived. The police caught him days later, his face bruised from Alice's branch, his eyes still cold, unrepentant. She would recover, they said, but recovery isn't just physical. We saw it in her eyes, that hollow look, the weight of what she'd endured. That night changed us. The forest, once our refuge, became a place of shadows, heavy with the memory of her fear. His smile. We still hike, but never in the Appalachians. Other mountains, other trails, but not there. The silence of those woods isn't peaceful anymore. It's waiting, watching, hiding something dark. I see her sometimes curled in that tent, and him, his smile cutting through the firelight. They're part of me now. A scar I carry, a reminder that the wild isn't always kind, and the monsters aren't always myths.